Story. So Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Whitehouse, and I, he was one of the first people that I got to meet when I came to the Senate in '09, and his interests in oceans and a lot of other issues were common to mine. But I remember this, we had been working on these treaties, and one day he comes to me and he says, why don't we just go down to the floor of the Senate and just bring them up, and they call it UC, unanimous consent. No one objects, they pass, which is like unheard of, unless you actually orchestrate it with the other side. And as a new, innocent, naive member, I said, sure, let's do that. We go down to the floor. We talk for not that long, which is very unusual for senators, and we found out that no one was coming down to oppose us. And we thought, let's ask for UC and see what happens. One after the other, boom, 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 all passed. No one objected. I turned to the Senator Whitehouse. I said, we're going to do this more. Let's figure out some other bills, maybe health care, maybe, not really. But it was an amazing moment in time. And that, I guess, as I'm listening to the message that Philippe said on hope and opportunity, there is always opportunity, but you have to look for it. And, same as Philippe, I'm not interested in talking about the politics of where we are today, because I will tell you, people do come up to me and say, what's going to happen? What does this mean? It is not as bad as people think, because there's always folks out there that are trying to figure out what are those opportunities? What are we going to do to make America, this country, this world a better place? And there's no better issue than around oceans, because, when you talk about the waste dump, the plastic, and all the accumulation in the Pacific, that's not a Democrat issue, that's not a Republican issue, that's not a libertarian issue, that's an issue of survival as a world if we don't solve these problems. In Alaska, which has an enormous amount of coastland and incredible fisheries, which are now the most sustainable fisheries in the world, it is about that survival of how do you make sure what you do in policy has a direct impact. And when the stories are being told, when a story is being told about the folks down south, I think about our Alaska Native people and the fisheries and the value of that. It is not a question of, is it important this year or next year? It is a question of survival. They live off of the land. They live off the ocean. I actually joked with many different people of regulators in the government when we would argue over how something should be regulated. I said, well, I'll rather turn it over to the elders in my state who have been managing fisheries for 10,000 years and surviving. That's a good measurement of successful management if they still are living today, that their fish supply still exists today. And so when you think about oceans, and this is why, as someone born and raised in Alaska, I see the value of it, not only from all that was talked about just a few minutes ago, but also what the future holds. As we continue to look at what's happening in the Arctic and the potential, no fisheries is allowed up there at this point. But what does that mean? What's it going to be? What is the opportunity to manage that the right way? Alaska used to be in the 1970s, for anyone that wants to go back in history, our fisheries and the protection of the oceans was, literally, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it I've only been drinking wine, not beer, so I'm trying to be careful here. But it was a rough business. First out, got whatever they could get. And literally, you would have violent acts. We would have multiple problems out on the ocean because it was just a constant get what you can, strip it for what you can, and get the money for the fisheries. Alaska realized, because in our Constitution of Alaska, it is required to manage our resources for the benefit of the people in abundance, meaning not to strip it down to nothing and then leave it, but how to manage it for generations. In the Alaska Native culture, it's how do you manage and what do you do for the 7 generations to come. So that thought came through Alaskans. We figured out we have to manage this differently. The Magnuson-Stevens Act was an incredible piece of legislation that constantly needs revisions, but the end result has now made sure that Alaska fisheries are not only managed during the season, but year-round, and they're the most sustainable in the world because of that. And that is the kind of thinking that is the opportunity and the forward thinking that has to happen. When you think about Congress as confused and slow and dysfunctional as it is, the most important thing in my belief, and when I became a senator, was the work that Ocean Champions was doing. It was like every time they'd meet with me, it could be a really bad day, but it was always about how great it is, how much opportunity there is. And they would tell me these stories about, we got to do this, we got to do that. And when you listened to their pitch, it was not about, again, a partisan pitch. It was about, this is why it's important. And when you think about where we are in this world today and the work that needs to be done, it doesn't matter if it's on oceans or any kind of subject matter you think of, we need people who are going to step over the line to push the envelope. The kind of thing we did, Sheldon and I, when we walked to the floor, when people told us, you're crazy, don't do that, you'll be ruled out of order, you push it because you have champions out there. What Ocean Champions does a lot of times, and I saw it firsthand, they would recognize those people who would walk that line, push over the edge, find out those issues they can work on. And I think of, the money that's now put into research of acidification, electronic monitoring that will improve our ability to understand our fisheries and patterns, the work on MSA, Magnuson-Stevens Act, the list, or plastics in the water, the small plastic beads, that was a big issue. Again, Ocean Champions never sits around and says, oh, it's dysfunctional in Washington, we're not going to do anything this year, let's just wait. They're always kind of pushing the envelope because the opportunities, when they happen, you have to be ready and ready to move forward, because that's how Congress works. And they always were there. When we did, again, and I always like to call it, my son calls it pirates. He's 14 now, he doesn't say that, but back then he did. But the pirate fishing, it was the most abusive fishing that you could see. I mean, in Alaska, we saw it, billions of fisheries just stripped out, and no care about what the impact would be about moving that fish off the ocean floor and what would happen next to the next generation of fishermen and people who wanted to utilize that fish for their ability to live. These regulations make a big difference. These treaties make a big difference. But again, having an organization and being the political organization that it is, it recognizes, not only does it advocate, it recognizes the people who are doing the work. Because in Washington, you don't really get people that come and say to your office, you're doing a great job. Usually 90% or 99% of the people are upset about something. They come, and you can see them. I've seen it many times. You're in a grocery store, and you're doing your thing, and you look out of the corner of your eye. You try not to make eye contact, because the minute you do, it's like laser lock-in. And they're on a mission. And their mission is going to tell you everything you have done wrong. And then they'll tell you why they need you to do something. But what Ocean Champions does is they do it in a different way that I think has been the most productive way to deal with ocean issues. Not only do they recognize the issue, but they try to recognize how you, as the person in public policy, are doing and what you can do. So even though where you stand in this last election, for or against whoever the candidates were, the work of the oceans doesn't stop. The research that needs to be done can't be done one year and stop the next. It has to be continued, because that's how you get good data to determine fishery patterns. And when waters are warming in Alaska and how fish are moving more north than south, what that means to our fishing and capacity. What it means when you now, in Alaska, for example, declare a fisheries disaster. It used to be because of some man-made activity. And in reality, it is now, because the impact of climate change is changing the temperatures of the water and impacting fisheries to the point where in some of our communities, the king salmon is an important part of the nutritional values of what Alaska Native individuals consume. When they can no longer consume that as part of their diet, it has a huge impact. And of course, we all think, and I say this collectively, well, we'll just figure out how to give cash to the economy, and they go down to the grocery store, if they have one, and buy food product. That does not work. It does not work because their history and their culture and their dietary requirements. So we have to think about this not only from preserving oceans for many other generations, but people who live and die off the ocean in the sense of their survival. When I think about, when they asked me if I would come down and speak, and I took the red eye to get down here, I got here at 6 a.m, and I said, this is one group, and I sit as their chair of their advisory board. It is one group. Without hesitation, when they called, I said I would absolutely be happy to help, because I think there's a lot of people who don't understand what the oceans are about. One of the things I would hope this session, as people move forward, as you, I hope, get more engaged. Some of you are probably not as much engaged as some others, maybe on oceans issues, but engaging politically is critical, and not just with coastal representatives, but people who are living in Indiana, or my friend Connor, who's here from Arkansas and other states, that may not extend out to the coast, but have as much interest as we do who live on the coast of survival of our oceans. This is a tactic that I would highly recommend to people, that we engage with folks. I don't care if they live in Iowa or in Alaska or Florida or Arizona. I actually joked with Senator Reed. He always says, well, we were once an ocean. Yeah, a long time ago. But the point is, getting people connected from all across the political arena is critical. And because this is one of those issues that is nonpartisan. I don't care who you talk to. If you don't preserve the oceans today, it won't be around, as my friends in the Alaska Native community would say, for the next 7 generations. That's how we have to think. It's not about the next day or the next session. It's 7 generations from now. What do we leave for the next group? As pointed out, these students that are here, what do they see as what they will inherit from us? And there's a lot of work still to be done. I mean, I think of in Alaska on acidification of the waters, most people until recently understood what that even meant. We had people who in Congress have no clue what that is. But our job is to help educate them. Because the more they're educated on these issues, the more friends they are supportive of what we're doing. And when we talk about research that's necessary over multiple years, they see the value of investment in that. Because it is about making sure that this generation, next generation, can enjoy what we have in our oceans. I'll end on this note, and that is, I like the point that Philippe said, and that is hope and opportunity. We sometimes forget that in public policy. We get in the grind of the day, and constituents calling, committee meetings are going on, people complaining about everything in the world. And the thing that drives me when I was in public office, 22 years in public office, was when I had young people come visit me or people who are passionate about the issues. Because what they instilled in me when they left was not about what's wrong with what we're doing, but what the opportunities are and what they hoped for as they saw the next situation, maybe on an issue on illegal fishing or fisheries in general or whatever it might be. You all being here tonight, first off, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being out here on, someone said, I'm sorry about the weather, and I said, I'm from Alaska, it was 5 degrees. This is, hey, rain, who cares? I'm all for it. But for you to take your time to come out tonight to hear a little bit from us about why we're committed to this effort, why we're committed to Ocean Champions, why we think they're an incredible advocacy arm and political arm of helping our oceans make it to the next generation and the 7 generations beyond, I thank you for that. What you do next is even more important. And I know David will talk more about that, but what you do next and how you commit more than what you're doing today is going to be critical, because I always joke with people, because most people think, oh, someone's doing that work, whatever that work is. Actually not. There's a lot of things not being done because people assume other people are doing it. We have to assume in this room we are all champions because 1, you came here, 2, you're listening, 3, you are engaged in some form and some level of helping our oceans preserve themselves and help them in some way. So thank you for doing that. It's an honor to be part of this group. You will always find me, and I won't, someday, maybe after dinner, I'll be happy to tell you some great stories with some of my former colleagues and their lack of knowledge and how I used unique techniques to advise them and educate them. But it is about every day educating people about the importance of the oceans, even when they know or think it's not a priority to them, but helping them understand it. And our public policy makers in Congress need this, and they need it not just from people like myself, but from you all, because you have the impact of 1, I like this part on the bottom here. When you vote for oceans, you vote, you have impact. And politicians understand this. But having you be the advocate is even the better part of it all. So thank you very much. Thank you for being part of this. And I'll turn it over to David next, or whoever's going to introduce you.